Hello, hello, hello. It's Dr. Victorious here, and welcome to another episode of Be Victorious. Of course, you all know who I am. It's Dr. Victorious. Please make sure you're following us on all social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, we're out there. Also, follow us on all streaming podcast arenas because we're out there and I'm so excited about it. Well, guess what? I have a wonderful guest. I actually was on her podcast, and that's how we met, and we've been wonderful friends and connected ever since. I would love to introduce you to this young and wonderful young lady by the name of Miss Queenie. And you were,
Hi.
oh my God, this is so humbling.
Hi.
I I wanted everybody to know that we actually met on your podcast.
We
And
did.
the amazing thing was it actually got a lot of wonderful reviews.
Yeah.
So many wonderful reviews that we did a live.
Yeah.
And they are still talking about this live. I've met tons of people thanks to your live. So thank you so much for not just only doing the podcast, but doing the live.
Thank
I
you.
found out when we did our live discussion is that you're not doing that for rhyme or reason. You actually have very, very great knowledge of adverse childhood experiences. So
Yeah.
would you mind introducing yourself first?
Sure. Sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to come and sit down and chat with you. This is such an honor. And yes, I'm Queenie Love. Of course, that's what my friends affectionately call me. And host of, Relationship Zone, the podcast. And you're right, I podcast, but um, my podcast is not centered around ACEs, but the work I do, it caused me to become a facilitator and an advocate, in regarding childhood or adverse childhood experiences and childhood traumas. I'm not a therapist, but naturally in the space that I'm in, I have to see those that I serve in a trauma informed lens. And so this allowed me to look at my own life and my own self and to understand the connection um, as to why, my path was the way it was. And it helps me to understand others. So thank you again for allowing me to sit with you tonight.
It is my pleasure. Now, when we did meet, you threw out some wonderful names, and it, of course, grabbed my attention because as a facilitator, you have been advocating for ACEs for a very, very long
Yeah.
time. And you sat at the table with some famous greats. And
Yeah.
so it's humbling to actually be here with someone that is very knowledgeable about
Yeah.
ACEs because we are not alone at all.
Right.
So I had to bring you on here because not only do you bring that, and yes, your podcast isn't about ACEs, it's about relationships.
Yeah.
And ACEs has an impact on what?
Relationships
Relationships.
for sure.
So it was important to bring you on. Now, the wonderful thing is because you have openly came out and said that you have ACEs, the questions that I am going to present to you are really the ACEs questions. A lot
Sure.
of people really don't know that because a lot of people don't know about ACEs. So the fact that you actually know about it, you advocate for it, this is going to be really good. Are you
Yeah.
ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, tell us about ACEs.
Tell you about adverse childhood experiences. It's something um that I don't want to say it defines us, but it definitely is a fingerprint um for those of us that realize that we have an abundance of experiences present in our childhood. And for me personally, just kind of looking at, like all the different things that you went through and you kind of normalize the trauma. But later on in life, you see these horrible patterns, these cycles of, mistakes, and you just kind of caught in it. And then you have kind of a moment where you got to look back and be like, why am I doing that? What happened? What did I do? Like, how did I get here? Why am I choosing this? Why am I, steady making these decisions, or some people call mistakes, but I'm like, they're decisions, mistake or not. It's a decision that you're making. And then when you really dive deep into it, you see the connection. A lot of those things that you're doing currently as an adult, really there's a direct connection to your past when you were a child. And so I think with ACEs, some of us maybe we don't know because we don't know what it means, adverse childhood experience. We don't know exactly what that means.
Right.
But for me, it's like, oh, guess what? I had a mom that was a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I responded a particular way to survive and to be able to live around that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I experienced molestation or rape. So then I had to figure out coping mechanisms to survive and maybe to get out of that situation. Or, as I said, just survive and attempt to thrive in it, right? That's what I'm thinking I'm doing as a child. You don't really know. Or for some, excuse me, they had a parent or a loved one that they were incarcerated and they had to deal with that separation, that person being gone. And then, to bring it home, like for me, something that's wasn't necessarily included in the ACEs assessment initially when it was created, was, living in a community that was ridden with drugs and gunfire. And, you grew up in the hood. And even though I didn't grow up in the hood, I still spent 4 years there and I was traumatized by maybe 5 years being connected to it, but traumatized with undiagnosed PTSD. And that was certainly an ACEs because that, it formed the way I saw the world, right? I was afraid in certain communities. I was afraid in communities of color because I lived in a community of color that was filled with gunfire and drugs. And so all of that is an ACEs, or our ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences. So that's kind of just a little bit about it. I know you're going to get more into it, but I just want to give a little bit of examples of what it looks like. Because for others, it may not look the exact same, but it doesn't mean it's it's any less trauma. We process things differently. And so that's how we manage it, depends on how we process it. We have the tools, then maybe we're okay if we have a good family that kind of helps us to cope, or if we have some outside or external support that helps to it helps us to process it properly. That's one thing. But many of us we were left without support. And it changed for us maybe when we became older and start seeking help. But as a kid, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, no one taught me how to cope with rape.
Right.
No one taught me how to cope with molestation and the abuser is still around.
Right.
No one taught me how to cope with a grandmother that just passed away and no one said she's not coming back. You see what I'm saying? No one taught me how to cope with that. So at 11, 12, 13, I was just trying to figure it out. That's all.
It's ACEs. It is.
ACEs.
It is. And we don't know what it is until we actually stop and think about it. Now, I'll be honest. I was very excited to present in the new district that I'm in. And when I tell you those people were in there crying, they were crying. It's devastating because they've never heard of it at all. I'm in Texas. They have to worry about that. This is Texas, remember?
Yeah.
Crying, I promise you. And all I did was present. Of course, I had to throw in Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris because her TED presentation was amazing. And I couldn't make it about me because it's not about me at all. But then again, I had to. I had to know where I came from. Chicago is that type of community.
Yeah.
I was there for 20 years, but let's be clear, not just Chicago. Who leaves Kansas City to go to Chicago.
Mm.
So I get it. Trust and believe me. And I think that's the value of what we're doing here. We have to continue to educate and talk. So I appreciate you for being here and being so knowledgeable about it. Okay. So you're aware of the ACEs categories and things of that nature.
Yes.
So my question to you is, what ACEs category do you belong to?
Well, I mean, I have about 9 aces.
So your ACEs score was what?
Honestly, I think it was a 9. I have like 9 of the 10 any given day, I mean,
And that's you know what, it's been the norm. Everybody's been like, shoot, it depends on the day. I'm an 8 or a 9 or a 9
yeah,
or a 10. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
It
It
is.
just depends.
So just pick one and it's okay. Like, mine is household dysfunction. I'm majoring household dysfunction.
Mm,
I really was not physically or emotionally abused. My parents did the best they could, but it was that household dysfunction for me.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
one?
For me, it was definitely the physical abuse. Yeah, I did a lot of the physical and emotional abuse because mine ties in with abandonment and of course the physical. But it's yeah, the community. I mean, it's probably a little bit of all that.
Yes. I mean, no offense. You are, I mean, no offense. This is the reason why I like the ACEs test, but then I don't, because you have one question that encompasses 5 questions.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I like it, but I don't. That's the reason why I'm like, what category?
Yeah.
But I agree, you can be in every category.
Yes. Yes.
And so
You
I like you talking about whichever one you choose.
yeah, you definitely can slide in and out. And I think again, if we really think about that,
Mhm.
think about the most traumatized individuals, oftentimes they slide in and out. I mean, if we just think about a third world country,
Mhm.
think about what the average, and I'll just use females, and I don't mean to sound sexist toward, against men or anything like that, but if we think about certain third world countries, women are mutilated
Mhm.
vaginally, right? And
Mhm.
then they live in communities where it's filled with depravity.
Mhm.
They are oppressed. And
Sex
so,
trafficking.
yeah. So if you look at that, they're in every category.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the things about when I facilitate, I try not to categorize people. I allow them to do that if they want, if it helps them to better process and see where they fit in.
Mhm.
But sometimes if you focus too much on one, you'll forget about those other things.
I like this. Come
you
on.
know so so
Yeah.
I for me personally, when I am facilitating and having these roundtable discussions in large groups or small, I like to keep the boundaries open so people can really see their full self,
Good.
um and allow for honesty and open healing, right? Because I just can't focus on the abandonment and then minimize the community,
Right.
right? I can't do that because that had a bigger impact, but it impacts me differently along my adult life than the abuse did, right? But it still impacts me. It causes me to pick certain neighborhoods that I live in currently at 40 plus. I'm like, oh, not living over there. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it comes back because it comes to me because I remember when. I remember where I knew what it was like living in a certain community, and I didn't want to raise my children there. So I chose a different path. And then on the more extreme side, I knew what it was like having certain types of men around the house. And so with my children, when I became divorced, I chose to have none at all. You get what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and this is all tied to the trauma that I experienced as a child.
Yeah.
It all goes back to that.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I do want to make sure that I speak from a healing space because
Mhm.
this is it's an ongoing healing journey.
Yes, it is.
But what's beautiful about it is when you know.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, where you and I and many of us are in our community now. Some of us are still, just coming in and trying to figure it out. But I wouldn't be where I am now had I not taken the time that I have to heal those wounds. Because I know that I'm going to need to help carry other people so that they can understand as well. And hopefully we can save the next generation.
Absolutely.
To come. So
I mean, hopefully it will be podcasts and they will be great.
yeah.
And then put this on something else, because us growing up was VH1 tapes and tracks and things are evolving, but it's still the same. So I agree with you. Our goal is to save this next generation. And I agree.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You talked about your healing journey. What have you done to address your ACEs?
You know what? I think the first thing I did was own them. On my show, I think I share this a lot, especially like when I'm talking about this in community. First time I ever took that ACEs assessment years ago, I remember taking it, and the score was so high. I remember turning the paper over and trying to hide it because I was like, that can't be true, And the funny thing, Tori, was that I knew these things had happened, but now I'm about to share these things with the world, and I was not ready, right? Because I think I might have been, I don't know, I was working probably as a case manager or something, but we're in this training, and I'm like, this can't be true. So I didn't own it. I mean, I knew it was true, but I was ashamed of it. It's hard when you're in a space with people that don't look like you, and you're all revealing your ACEs, and yours is probably like a 9. And not to say that their 2 isn't just as impactful for them, but at that moment, girl, I just traded my damn 9 in for that 2 any day. So I wasn't ready. But it stayed in me. It stayed with me for years. I mean, I knew I'd taken that, and it's kind of like once you take the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back in. So I knew it existed. And it was like I was screaming that around, like, hey, something happened to me. Something happened to me. I was a 28, 30-year-old adult at that time. Something happened to me, but I still wasn't ready to face what I saw on that paper. And even as I had gone to therapy for other things that had gone into my life, trying to become a higher self, therapists didn't address ACEs. And I thought that was interesting because although I would tell them these things that I'm working on, they never use the words that I understood, which were adverse childhood experiences or childhood trauma. At that time, they didn't use it to help me. Right. And so because of the field of work I'm in, you just can't get away from ACEs. You can't. So it came about again. And I took that test, and because I want to be the best self that I can be, I often say my highest self, I boldly stood up and was like, hey. Hey, let me tell you how many I got over here. And that was like the beginning of my journey, because when things happen to you as a kid, well, for me, things happened to me as a child, and I blame myself for many years, like probably until I finally accepted those ACEs. I was blaming myself. I was blaming myself for it all. Like, I should have known better. I probably did know, but I was doing that. And when I finally accepted my ACEs score, and I accepted my truth, yes, this happened. Yes, that happened. Yes, this happened too. I know you wouldn't believe it, but that happened too. That's when I really took back my life, took my power back. And I remember after that, I had an amazing therapist. She's such a hippie girl. I love her dearly. But but I remember sharing with her, I told her, I said, I want to talk about my ACEs. She says, absolutely, let's do it. And that was the first time a therapist welcomed that conversation, and we worked together to help me to cope, right? And help me process and to help me to forgive myself because it really wasn't my fault.
Right.
And so yeah, so that was really my healing journey, and I've been on it ever since. And probably why I talk so openly about things that
Mhm.
happen that make other people uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
it's okay.
Because what you just said is something that I've been asking therapists. I'll put it on my page.
Yeah.
So, therapists, are we talking about ACEs or what? Some people have said yes, and some people have
Mhm.
actually said no.
Mhm.
I've had a couple of inboxes. Of course, they don't want to be on the page, but this is wonderful to hear that
Yeah.
you actually have worked with tons of therapists.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until this pivotal moment that you reached out and she said, let's do it. And here you are.
Yeah.
Such a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The smile
It is.
says it on its own, honey,
It
because
it
we
really
couldn't
was.
have ever met and it brought us together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Absolutely.
amazing. Ooh,
Oh, thank you, sweetheart.
ooh.
You're
What?
doing the hard work consistently, girl. I love it.
I mean, I promise you, these young ladies were crying because I had to also share my story of
Yeah.
being new to the district. And I went on ahead and let them know I moved here from Chicago. Everything that you hear is real. I actually am recently divorced, all of that. So it was like, so I understand when you say you have to kind of set the tone or set the example for people to understand
Yeah.
because you have done that. And this podcast is going to hear it too. So I'm excited about that. So, how important is the conversation of ACEs and how can we promote awareness?
Oh, it's very important. How important? I can't even measure that, right? I think it's as important as one would believe if they want to heal. Y- you're going to have people that aren't there yet, and they're going to swear that they've had no adversity in their childhood. Um, and because we understand that, this study, the science of this is steady expanding, right? And so, first it starts, when you're young. Their initial studies of when you're like 2 and 3 and 4, and we understand that you have to go further, right? Because the brains are still forming, behaviors are still forming and still influence 12, 13. Wherever that thing happens to you, it changes you, whatever age. And so whenever someone really decides that they want to heal and they see that there's a pattern, that's the measure of importance, I believe,
Mm,
when it comes to this conversation. For me,
I agree.
it's hugely important because I know that the things that happen to you when you are young, they impact your life, good, bad, or indifferent.
Mhm.
But if you have adversity and if you suffer trauma and go through crisis and you do not have help processing that, it honestly can ruin your life.
Mm.
And so it's important, in my own opinion, that we have these conversations, we curate these conversations, we see people through a trauma informed lens,
Mm.
and we let them know that what happened to them isn't their fault, especially when we're talking about childhoods. And childhood is a span of
It
time. It's not just because you're 2 or 3 or 5, but 12, 13, 14 even. That's still childhood. And trauma can happen then and throw you completely off. I know what the studies say, but from lived experience,
Mhm.
which is super important, we see that doesn't matter the age, trauma is trauma is trauma, and it can change you.
Right.
So I think we should talk about this as often as we can, I think we should create safe spaces to talk about it. I think men should get in on that conversation, um, because trauma happens to them.
Mhm.
And I think Black men should lead these conversations
Mm.
because they need to really embrace healing, um, even the more.
Mhm.
Um, so it's super important, Tori, just to kind of shorten it. And my heart, when I'm talking about it, I'm really passionate because of the pain that I've seen. Um, and I've seen a lot of pain that goes unchecked, unhealed, not tended to, shall I say. And I can't imagine what it's like to be that person holding on to that pain.
Mhm.
And so I think it's great when we create these compassion filled conversations that allow safe spaces for people to talk about these things. You may not want to sit down with a therapist. Some people may not be able to afford one.
Right.
And what we're talking about or how we're approaching it, I don't need to prescribe you a pill for that.
Mm-mm.
We're talking about it through love and understanding. And you can seek, you know, psychiatry assistance. You don't need that here. This is just, let's talk about it. Let's get it on the table and begin to face it.
That's it. That's all we ask. I
Yeah.
don't want to be a therapist at all. We're going to let them do their job.
Yes.
We're going to bring light to this because bringing light to it is going to open up a
Yeah.
lot. So I
Yeah.
thank you. Oh, good answer.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier, one of the questions that I have is if you could add anything to the ACEs categories, what would you add and why? Now, I will let you know you did bring up community, which
Yeah.
is great because a lot of people don't understand that it's not just African American communities. Community is community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have anything else that you would add in addition to the community, because you can talk about that some more, what would you add and why?
It definitely would be and I just full disclaimer. So just in case anyone goes out and look it up, there's still work being done on
Absolutely.
expanding. So
It is.
I don't want to, I want to come at me and be like, yeah, they're studying community. Well, they are now.
Yes.
But culture is big. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we should add culture, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
in certain cultures, certain behavior is acceptable. And if you take that same person and put them in a different culture, it's no longer acceptable. And that's traumatic. It's a traumatic adjustment because now what was normal here, you're over here and it doesn't fit in. And now you're finally realizing that something might have been wrong over there, or maybe something's wrong over here. But either way, you're traumatized because of this adjustment and no one's helping you to process it. So culture is a big thing. Certain, there are just certain cultures that certain practices are okay. And I think that globally, we should look at that
Mm-hmm.
because now in America, we're a melting pot for real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up and they had this believing that we were when we weren't, but we really are now.
Yeah, we are.
And so things are different for a lot of people, but community is a big thing because again, and I'm really, really intentional about communities of color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we tend to be okay with certain behaviors in certain communities of color. And that is problematic because it negatively affects and impacts our family structure,
Mm-hmm.
the women that's in our community, the
Mm-hmm.
men that's in our community, the children that's in our community, the drugs, the alcoholism that's in our community that we ignore and we call it just drunks or people just taking shots. um, the music that's in our community, all these things affect our children. And we can ignore it now like it doesn't, but that really is a trauma response.
I was joking with a few students.
Yeah.
And I said, our rappers sold drugs.
Yeah.
Because that's what they talked about.
Yeah.
But these rappers now, they do it.
They do it a lot.
Kids are idolizing that. Ooh, this is going to be a good one because that's the truth. How many have passed away already? I mean, and granted, we've had people in the past that have passed away for the same relatable reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. We have to look at it. We can't. And I'm going to say this, and I really don't care
Go ahead.
who comes for me for this.
Oh,
But we have to look at it and stop allowing people that don't look like us looking at it. Like Black people, we need to look at our communities. We need to look at these behaviors. We need to look at what adverse childhood experiences look like for Black people and not allow only white folks to study us. That's a big problem.
Real. Yeah.
The bigger problem is when I'm in these spaces, there's not many people that look like me. And these are good people. They have great intentions. I'm not saying they don't. I'm thankful. But why is that? You see what I'm saying? Like, I appreciate the fact that they're studying my community, they're studying me, and they're talking about this, and they're trying to give definition to certain behaviors. But where are my Black folks at looking at these situations saying, hey, this is not right. This is not okay. These behaviors is not okay. We are suffering over here. We are a traumatized community. Like, I mean, really saying that and really beginning to pull back the things that we act like it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. The language we use, it's not okay. I mean, anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox.
Good, girl. Because it's the truth. Yeah. They love Dr. Williams out there. But if I ask my people who I love to share,
no. Well, you know, we have a culture, and we had it for a long time where we took our secrets to the grave, and generations behind those that took it to the graves we've suffered. Now this generation, we don't have an excuse. We ask questions and the answers are readily available at our fingertips.
Right.
But what do you do with the information? What do you do with the knowledge? For those that are religious, the Bible says that my people suffer because of lack of knowledge. I also believe that we suffer, not that the Bible needs me to do an amendment. Look, here's my thing. I believe that we also suffer due to lack of action. So when we get the knowledge, what do we do with it? How do we apply it? Right. So I think that that's a big problem for us, is that the knowledge is available, but it does you no good if you turn a blind eye to it and act like it's not happening. That's what I did with my ACEs the first time. I know it's there. That's cognitive dissonance. It's not really happening. But it kept showing up in my life, kept showing up in my relationships, kept showing up in all the things, and all my insecurities, all my uncertainties, self-sabotage. It was showing up. It was showing up. And if I'm not careful right now, if I can be real honest, if I'm not careful, they'll show up again. So I have to keep working on it. I have to keep working on it.
Very good. This is so real. It's a real conversation, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you all to know that she had no copy of any question This is all off the cusp because the reality of the situation is exactly what you're saying. I presented to a room of people that was not my color. Oh, they cried.
Yeah.
But I had to put that reality, like I always do out on social media, and say, go to the CDC website. On that same website, you put in COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
They got us back in school as educators. How many people here still, it's people out of our building now because of COVID. But the businessmen say, we ready to get back to work because we losing money. And now they are trying to normalize COVID-19. But on that same website, I told them to pull out their phones and put in ACEs. Because here's this Black woman presenting this information. And I had everybody's attention in the room because it's sitting on the same website, stagnant, been sitting since 1998, and we're trying. But it's something we really can do, like you said, on our own to become aware of what ACEs are. And there are small things we can do. I gave the example on a podcast with Express Yourself Black Men, or, I do podcasts all the time. And I told them I did used to whoop my kids. I don't know more. That could be traumatizing. It's not to you. But how many times have you gotten mad at your kid and took it out on them?
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it. So I'm not just talking about this for real. I'm practicing what I preach. My kids will tell you. What's funny is I'm trending. Didn't know it.
Really?
But I'm trending on TikTok for answering questions about being a mom. And I make a mention of the fact that I'm not whooping you. I'll give you a punishment, but I'm not going to put your hands on in the responses. Just by that, they don't know who I am. They don't know I advocate for ACEs, but the responses just in that itself, good for you for not whooping your kids. I get whooped. Can you be my mom? It's like, dang, it's really disappointing.
Yeah.
I had to write for one young person. I said, it's a waiting list. You got to join it. But the reality of that situation is what it is. Why does somebody else want me to be their mama?
Yeah.
So we got to look at ourselves and reevaluate. And I'm glad you brought all of this up because it's real. And I thank you so much for being on here, which means what's going to happen is we're probably going to have another live.
I'm okay.
This is going to be good.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Oh my God. I know that somebody is going to be inspired by this podcast, as they all have, but it was something about this one.
Yeah.
So I thank you for taking time out of your schedule. For us. Now, please tell us where we can find you because they're going to come looking for you now for sure.
And it's funny. I'm kind of on a sabbatical, right? So I have tried to decrease my footprint on social media just a bit. So I've been on a sabbatical for the last month and I'm trying to go all the way through the summer. However, you can still find me because obviously I've not done a good job with deactivating accounts. I keep getting messages. I'm like, that thing, I still have that.
Yeah.
Instagram's still up. They're like, Instagram is still up. I am on break from Instagram, but I have content out there. And if anyone tries to find me, they can just find me at the Relationship Zone. On Instagram, it's the_relationship_zone. You can also find me. I'm not on Facebook right now. Now I will not be back on Facebook, but for a while. But when I do come back at the end of the summer, it will still be at the Relationship Zone. It's a podcast. You can listen to my podcast, The Relationship Zone, anywhere you get your podcast from. And I am just now getting on TikTok. And TikTok is a space that I'm just enjoying. It's kind of it's kind of like I'm on sabbatical, but I still want to be a little bad. So, so
And I think
I'm.
we kind of did it at the same
Oh,
time.
did we?
Yeah, because I joined, I've been on with my daughters. That was one thing, but I joined as Dr. Victorious kind of like June, late June, early
Yeah.
July.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I've just been on there messing around, but I, you know, no matter where I am, I still show up the same, right? I want to do no harm, and I want to leave love and laughter, and I want you to know that you matter. And so if you come to the relationship zone TikTok, you may find a little bit of laughter, a little fun, but anything I post, it's intentional, and I want people to know that they matter, and leave them with thoughts. Of love and care, because I think we're all heavy right now. We're carrying something if you really get down to the nitty gritty of it all. So the relationship zone on TikTok, and I am also on Twitter. But on Twitter, I think I am Queenie, and that's really a space where I do most of my work advocacy, where I talk a lot about homelessness and some politics, but mainly it's just moving our lives forward. Advocating for homelessness and attempting to end homelessness, that's really my passion. So that's what you'll find on Twitter. So I'm all over the place,
That's
even though I'm taking a sabbatical.
that's fine. I can guarantee you I'm going. I didn't know you were on, I follow you everywhere and I did not on Twitter. But yeah, when
Yeah, I'm
you're
on Twitter. I'm definitely on Twitter.
I'll be looking forward to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm Queenie on Twitter. It's yeah, I had to think about it for a second, because I just was at a conference last week, an ending homeless conference last week, and I tweeted something about being at the conference. And while I was sitting in the conference having lunch, we had this big, banquet. I looked up, and my tweet shows up on this big screen, and I'm like, holy shit, that's my nickname. I got to get that down. What are they doing? Why did they retweeted
Yeah.
my tweet, and everybody saw it, and you could tell everyone just started looking back because our picture was there, and I was like, oh my God.
Okay, girl, that's what Twitter is for. Let's be
Right.
because what I post on Twitter may be victorious, it may not be. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
say something like, yeah, I got to get it together. It just depends. I love Twitter space. I do, but I get it and I totally understand. I do.
Yeah, I just didn't want the people at my job to be finding my nickname, which, obviously. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Mostly anywhere you're gonna find me. It really is rooted and grounded in love and being our best selves. So
This is with us. This, of course, is going to be a different podcast, but it's the energy. We've been like this, you guys, since we met. I have never met this woman in my life before, but we have been attached to each other ever since. And I thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I do, for taking time out of your schedule, everything. I really do appreciate it. So
thank you.
no problem. You guys, you've reached another episode of Be Victorious. And I thank you guys for joining. Please make sure you're following us on social media everywhere. I'm just like, Queenie, I'm everywhere. It's either Be Victorious, Dr. Tori, Victorious. You already know the deal. I'm on all streaming podcasts, streaming arenas, and I thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule to listen to this wonderful podcast. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.